Hi, I'm Joseph Rosales. Welcome to Business in the New Normal, where we share balanced information with our listeners to help them not just survive, but thrive in this COVID-19 economy that we find ourselves working in. I'm joined here by my co-host, Ike Devji. How are you, Ike?
Good morning. Good to be
Good,
with you.
good, good. I've said your name 100 times and I sometimes don't get it right. So it's funny. And we're here with our guest, Beits Livneh. How are you today?
Excellent. Thank you.
Good.
Glad to be here.
Good. Well, thank you for being here. We'll get back to our guests in a moment, but for now, I wanted to just start off with asking Ike. So, Ike, you're a asset protection attorney. You practice here in Scottsdale, and you have clients all over the country. What's going on with the state of business in your end right now with COVID, and we're trying to recover, and the vaccine's coming for many, and what have you been hearing out there?
Well, it's interesting the examples that you used, Joseph, because those are all things that we're helping clients deal with right now in different ways. I start every year in what I send my clients in terms of client communications and updates and risk management and the writing that I do for various publications with a review of basic risk management and asset protection concepts, sort of hey, let's go through this checklist and make sure we're starting the year on a good footing and securely. This year we have added, I have added a number of issues to that, we have to be reactive to current events and the headlines. So we're dealing with domestic terrorism issues, we're dealing with security issues, physical security issues for business owners. We're dealing with the possibility of significant business disruption with ongoing election-related violence. We're dealing with new issues like what if you had to terminate an employee or remove a partner from a business because of their conduct, which is on social media, right? So all of these things are things that are actually happening and which are outside the general scope of what if somebody comes to my store and falls down, right? So we have all of those traditional liability issues and some things that are time sensitive that we're dealing with. How about you? I know that you are working on a variety of projects. The leader of you is expanding into an online e-course. What are some of the developments there, and what are some of the leadership issues that you're helping your clients tackle right now as we start the new year?
Well, thank you for asking about that. It is interesting because leadership more now than ever is a critical and essential component in running any business, any enterprise, any organization. When I wrote the Leader of You, I started drafting it about 6 months ago, and when we released it about a month and a half ago, the concept was you can't be an effective leader of others unless you're first an effective leader of self. And we find people struggle with that because they have blind spots. And we know that if you don't know what your strengths or weaknesses are, how can you help make them better? So there's been a lot of development. We should release the digital course probably in about 2 weeks, I guess. And it's a 6-week program that walks people through concepts in the book to help them become even more effective, to understand how to reflect better, to look at their blind spots, to use those leadership essentials to become even more effective. Because many people are already effective, but everybody can be even more effective. It's like, some people are wealthy. You could be even more wealthy. You're happy, but you could be even more happy. So there's so much there, and we find that I know you do a lot of posting on our LinkedIn group, Business in the New Normal, our LinkedIn group, and you put a ton of great information there. I post some things, other people post things there. So I'm going to suggest that our listeners go to Business in the New Normal, our LinkedIn group, and also we have our YouTube channel, which has all of our episodes there, Business in the New Normal, and we have them listed in categories with it's like a library. You can go back and you can look at them and see, gee, what other topic would I be interested in? Our guest today, Beits, is going to talk about something that's so critically important to us as business owners and as consumers, as citizens, our cybersecurity, our ability to keep our information safe. Back in the old days, you lose your license, big deal, you go get a new one. Now it's a big deal. And there's so many ways for people to get into your stuff. So, it's interesting. I'm so excited to have our guest here today. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him now. Beits Levnah was born and raised in central Israel. He moved to Arizona in 2000 at the age of 23 with $300 in his wallet and the American dream. I love hearing about this, and I might even want to have you back on the program to talk about that part of your journey, because that's an amazing journey. We're all taking some journey. Since then, he got married to his wife, Christina, and together they have 4 kids, an 11-year-old daughter and 13-year-old triplets. There's another story. All right.
Yep.
His background and love for technology started back in Israel when he was 15 years old. He then got official training as part of his service in the Israeli intelligence force with top secret clearance, and worked at a Microsoft college in Israel as an assistant systems administrator before he decided to migrate to the US. The team at Gallup Technology, which is his company, offers IT services to small and mid-sized businesses in the West Coast, require help desk support, cloud migrations, hosted services, security, IT consulting, and budgeting, backup, and business continuity planning, and more. Beits is known to be an honest and friendly individual and entrepreneur who understands the value of relationships, respect, achieving goals, and not complaining when things get tough. And boy, things have gotten tough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Beits, welcome to the program.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And this topic is something that I've been talking about for a number of months, because it seems like it's accelerated even more since COVID hit. People hacking us and getting into our private information. So we wanted to arrange to have you come on and share some ideas with our listeners about how they can better protect themselves and better prepare for the inevitable hack that's going to come to most of us at some point. So speaking of hackers, how do they get us? How do they get to us?
Well, it's a very complex answer, and very very hard to answer because there's no one specific answer. As you know, it's kind of like asking, how do I get sick? You know, there can be many reasons and many methods of hurting yourself one way or another. With the hacking world, I am trying to always remind the small business, medium business owners who don't have the thousands of dollars a month budget to protect their network and their equipment and their employees, etc., and their data, of course. People that don't have that much money, I'm trying to remind them that this is nothing new. But on the other hand, we have opened some windows on the back of our house, kind of thing. And yeah, we might have had great locks on the door up until now. We might have had an alarm system in our metaphoric home over here. But right now, we're sending people to work from home. We are connecting remotely. We're migrating to the cloud. We're doing a lot more in terms of accessing data and exposing our clients' information, our credit card numbers, or everything that is housed usually on our local computer or local server, or maybe 1 or 2 cloud providers. Now it's much more wide. So we're opening those back doors, not just for ourselves to be able to operate and not shut down our business and allow our employees to work from home. We're also opening those back doors potentially to hackers. And how do they get there? There's a great interview that you had a couple of weeks ago with the attorney Erica, and I heard a lot of the stuff she said, and very smart lady. And I really loved hearing what she said, because a lot of people don't realize that leaving your computer in the car, for example, or trying to get connected remotely to your office without a VPN, which we're going to gladly talk about in a moment, or not having that 2-factor authentication, which is, to me, is the base foundation of basic security today. If you don't have 2-factor authentication for your email account, you're basically doing nothing to protect it. A good password means almost nothing today. So there's a lot of things that hackers take advantage of, that the laziness in the human beings is causing the hackers to have those as back doors, right? And I tell my clients a lot also, when we talk about adding security, and Joe, you guys know that banks and Microsoft and Google, all of those entities are always trying to add another layer of security. And when you're tightening up the security, you're lowering the user convenience, right?
Sure.
So the more security you have, the less convenient the user will have, or the more they're going to have to write down passwords on a notepad or a piece of paper, or God forbid, on a Word document on their computer. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And I'm going to give you some good advice.
Stop it.
Don't tell me that you're guilty of it, please. I don't want to hear that.
You just said something that I'm sure millions of people do. They type all their passwords in a Word document in their computers, and when it gets hacked, all their passwords are available. Is that what you're saying?
I've seen that more than I want to admit, and
Wow.
the sad thing is, it's even named passwords. The document itself is named passwords.
And it's usually on the desktop, right?
Either there's a shortcut. It's not really on the desktop. It's secured. It's just a shortcut on the desktop to the real location. So when a virus crawls on your system, one of the first things, depends what the virus is meant to do, but one of the first things on some of the viruses is that it's going to crawl in and look for any document that has either the name password in the name itself, or content on the content of the document is going to be passwords or a bunch of emails. So viruses are looking at specific information when they crawl on your system and go from your computer to the office server if you connect remotely. So we'll talk about that. I just want to take a breath and ask if you have any questions about that, if you want me to emphasize on any of those items.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you mentioned VPN, and we're going to ask you to expand on that. But let's start with passwords, password security. And we can't remember them all, we shouldn't write them down in a Word document. What are the most recommended and secure password storage systems that you think the average small business owner and me should be using?
Okay, so let's break it down into two sections. The first one is, what are good password practices in my technical experience? And the second one is, how do we overcome the need to have so many different passwords? Because the first recommendation is to never use the same password for more than one account. That is the very first thing. If you get hacked, I'll talk about the dark web in a second also if we have time, but let's say you use your password on Facebook. That's I don't know, happy123. Okay, that's your password, and your email address is either your personal one or, God forbid, your business email address. That's your login to Facebook. Now, Facebook, just like any other entity, was or will be hacked at a certain point, and those credentials have been or will be stolen at a certain point and will be sold on the dark web, most likely. That's why hackers steal passwords. They make money off of selling them. Now, if you use the same password on your Facebook account, the same password that you use on your email or your bank or your other social media or your client's portal or billing portal that's on the cloud or anything like that, then obviously those username and password credentials have been compromised. And now whoever bought them will try to go in and log in with those credentials to anywhere else. So having different username or different password, at least for every single engine or service that you have, is the first recommendation that I would have. Now, passwords by themselves should be, according to NIST and according to other government entities and cybersecurity experts, the longer the password, the better it is, because guessing, or for a computer, for an engine, for a bot to try to guess a 6-character password or 8-character password, it takes a lot less time than guessing a 12-character password. Now, Joe, you and I will look at each other and say, who's going to remember 30 different 12-character passwords? So there are tools out there that were meant just for that, and those tools, the password managers that are out there, are meant to have that convenience of securing, like having a database securing all of your passwords under one master strong password that nobody can guess, hopefully. And that also database is secured with that 2-factor authentication. I'll talk about that in a second. So there's a couple of examples. LastPass, LASTPASS. That is our favorite go-to password manager. There's a free version of it. There is a paid version of it that allows you to install it on multiple devices and sync all those passwords so you can access them from your cell phone and your laptop and your desktop, as long as you are paying that fee. and it's super expensive. It's like $2.50 a month. Um, and it's a joke because people tend to not spend that money, so they're not utilizing it correctly. But it's like 25 bucks a year or 40 bucks a year, let's say. It's a no-brainer. There's a family version of it also, like a family plan for LastPass. We all need passwords for, I need, my wife doesn't remember for the life of her any passwords at all. I'm her password manager. And, I have a family plan, and my kids' password, everybody's sharing that. They all have their own password manager. We can share one password, for example, with our, it's kind of sad, but we have a Subway app because we love Subway. So the password to log into Subway is the password we share between all of us. So when I change it on one spot, everybody gets the updated one. So
Interesting.
there's many tools like that, and LastPass is not the only one, but it's definitely one of our favorite ones because
Okay.
it's affordable and very secure.
Good. Thank
Now,
you. Yeah.
no problem. Now, the question I always get in my classes is, if you put all your passwords in one database, how is that any more secured? So companies like LastPass and 1Password or any other ones have the ability and recommended, obviously, to set up that two-factor authentication, which is, as I mentioned before, the very basic security you should have today besides a strong password. Two-factor authentication, many of your viewers heard it 1,000 times probably, but they might not know what it is. It's a very simple method to make sure that if somebody got their hands on your username and password, they can't log into whatever account they're trying to log into unless they also have, let's say, your cell phone, which will pop up a code when you try to log into your bank. We always saw that on bank, PayPal, whatever. Almost all of the providers today, almost every SaaS-based, cloud-based solution will give you the option to enable that, but people just don't want to do that because it's an extra 10 seconds or 4 seconds to log in somewhere. And why would I spend 4 seconds? Ike, have you seen in your experience how much time it takes to actually overcome a breach, and how much time businesses lose and how much money they lose? So those 4 extra seconds, wouldn't that make sense to actually invest when you log in twice a day somewhere, right? It makes no sense not to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what you said about $40 a year for a service like LastPass can prevent $1 million exposure or more for a small business. For businesses that have HIPAA related information, have a statutory per exposure liability. Obviously, if you have other kinds of information, including payment information, social security numbers, credit card numbers, checking account numbers, any of those things that many businesses handle, many advisors handle, including lawyers, CPAs, and financial advisors, all of them have that information exposed. And these simple things are absolutely, I think, as you're saying, the bare minimum that you should be investing in protecting.
Here's another scary story. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
I just wanted to ask to get clarification. Is it Lost Pass or Last Pass?
Last, LAST. That's the last
Gotcha.
password you're going to have to remember. That's
Got
what
it.
they
Last
invented
Pass.
with that.
Perfect. Okay. And now go with your story. Go ahead.
And not a story, just a simple example of Ike gave some great examples of HIPAA compliance and PCI compliance for the credit cards, SEC compliance, etc., for financial institutions. But there are so many small businesses that have no clue that they're actually holding information that is personal information of potential employees or employees, social security numbers. All of us as business owners have to retain the I-9 form or anything else that we have had the employees go through to apply for the job. We have to keep it, we have to store it somewhere. If you don't encrypt that data, if you don't realize that you actually have social security numbers somewhere in your computer, you might have nothing for your clients. But that doesn't mean that you're not responsible to protect your employees or ex-employees. We all know we have to save our employee files for a few years if somebody's going to sue us, if we have to we'll go back to taxes, whatever. How many times the social security number and birth date are listed on those forms?
Yeah.
So even a window repair company that doesn't do any financial data collection, they do all their credit cards online with PayPal, they don't have to worry about any PCI compliance reasons to worry about security. They do, but beyond that, they still have to remember your office manager and your installers and all of your workers' comp paperwork. That is somewhere on your computer. So nobody's off the hook, and nobody should be just sitting back and say, I don't worry about security.
Interesting.
And then it goes right down to restaurants, right? Which is a common place where people's identity card numbers at least one. It's amazing the number of business owners that I deal with that are in the hospitality business that don't have adequate levels of physical security, monitoring, IT security, and data breach and cyber liability insurance to cover you in the event of a breach, which is another important part of this. Is not just doing the right thing and having these technical details that Beits is providing detail on in place, but having a crisis management plan in place for when and if there is a breach that includes insurance to protect your business and cover the very significant costs of defense and even notifying every person in your client base. There was an issue here in Scottsdale a number of years ago that I often use when I teach CME around the country to physicians and even CLE classes, where a very well-known local dermatology practice had to inform 40,000 patients in writing that their information had been exposed. Now, just the cost of sending 40,000 people a letter, between the labor, the printing, and the postage, that's a $50,000 expense right there before you have a single claim.
Yeah. And one other thing we see a lot is, I'm sure you've seen that also, dealing with insurance applications. We have encouraged all of our clients to actually go back and review their insurance policy, the E&O policy, the cyber liability, but mostly the exclusions page, because you have you have people that say, oh, it's okay, I have cyber liability coverage, I'm good. But then you open the exclusion page and you see over there, they only will cover anything that has been breached if the device was in the office, if the breach happened in the office, in the main business address, the headquarters, whatever. Nobody's working from the office today. How do you not talk to your insurance agent or risk manager and have them revise that stuff? People just don't think about that. First of all, nobody tells them. You just you assume that your IT person or your cyber company or whoever you count on will come and tell you those things. I can guarantee you 95% of the cases, nobody will take the time to talk to you about that. So Joseph, thank you for having those type of webinars to explain to people what little things they can do to take home and actually do something about. So contact your insurance agency and tell them, this is our new reality. We are actually working remotely. What do we need to do? And by the way, it's kind of sad to see that most insurance companies will not tell you that you have just a basic coverage that doesn't cover crap, excuse my language. It will just take your money, very little. But if I tell my clients, if you're paying less than a couple of $1,000 a year on the cyber liability and the E&O policy, that tells me that you don't have the right policy. Because the right policy today in this reality, in this new reality, costs a lot of money because the insurance companies have a lot of risk they have to take. And I'm talking about obviously a law firm with 10, 20 employees. I'm talking about a restaurant with 7,000 credit card transactions a month. Those are entities that will pay a lot of money. Again, if you're a Windows installer and you have 5 installations a week because you just started your business, or you're a painter or whatever, your cyber liability policy is going to be really minimal compared to a law firm or medical office, obviously. But you need to fill up applications. If you don't have applications on an annual basis, that tells me that you don't have the right policy in place. The insurance company doesn't take the time to learn what exposure you bring to them, so they don't cover anything. And you just will count on it and you will never get it when time comes, unfortunately. And we see that all the time.
Well, what it does is it having a policy that doesn't cover what it needs to cover because of the exclusions is a false sense of security. Yeah. And that's where people get really banged and they're, oh my gosh, I have insurance. No, you don't. It doesn't cover this. And that's exactly what happened. And I think the other thing that is interesting to me is we started this program, Business in the New Normal, about 3 months after the pandemic had settled in, because we realized it wasn't going back to normal anytime soon. And in some cases, never. Some things have changed forever and will just have to work with that new normal. Other things might go back to some semblance of normal. And I think, insurance and risk management is one of those things where everybody, oh, it's only going to be a couple months. No, it's not. It's now this new normal. And we have to really go back and take a moment and say, wait a minute, am I covered? If I'm hacked personally, is my business covered? And if we're not asking that question, we're not taking care of ourselves. And that breach could be significantly expensive. To forget what you lose, regaining and recouping back to where you were is going to be expensive and time consuming. So I know my son's wallet got stolen out of his car about a month ago. And for some reason, my wife gave him his social security card and he put it in his wallet.
Ouch.
He didn't put it in it. And so now he keeps getting these notifications from LifeLock that somebody's trying to open an account in his name. And it's happened probably 5 or 6 times in the last month. People are trying, they got his social now. So do we change it? Do we not? I mean, there's questions there, but there's so many things. And you are just a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much. Because
of course,
I mean, there's things that we all use our computers every day. We have no idea how accessible our computers are to those people that full time every day, 24 hours a day are trying to get in there, trying to break.
I look at it this way, Joseph. When I drive my car and I go to to a store, do I lock the car when I leave it? Yeah. Do I just lock it or do I turn the alarm on? Obviously, it's the same today, but it used to be different, right? You have to use the key back in the days and then maybe. Do I close the windows? Absolutely. Do I keep an eye on the car? Do I sign up with OnStar or whatever, that in case if it's a car that's worth enough, should I be able to track it and shut it down remotely and tell the police where it is? We're taking those measures on a regular basis with stuff that costs us a lot of money in our heads. A car is expensive. Our computer is just like, $1,000 kind of expense that lasts for a few years. So it's not even that much if you break it down per monthly expense kind of thing. But the damages of not protecting it correctly and the lack of understanding of what it takes or how much not expensive it is compared to what it used to be 5 years ago. There are so many companies today that can help you as a small business owner to really tighten those locks and make sure you have the right tools. You're never going to be 100% bulletproof, right? Never. Hackers are always going to be one step ahead of everybody else. But the question is, when you have a claim with your insurance, because it's going to get to that. We all will get to that point. Knock on wood. I never had that. But I know that we are building our procedures and our processes in our business to the point that we are ready to be hacked, because it will happen. And I'm not going to be an ostrich. We're not going to put my head in the sand. And I'm not going to be a business owner that will just hope that it's not going to happen. I need to be prepared. And that means, the insurance coverage, but also your insurance company is going to come and say, okay, show me the logs for the last 2 weeks of your firewall. Can you show me the logs? No, Mr. Insurance person. I bought a $100 router in Best Buy that only keeps the logs for 24 hours or doesn't keep them at all. So now the insurance company is going to say, okay, you're supposed to get your damages assessed. We should be able to help you, but we don't know what the damages are because we don't know what information was leaked. Our digital forensics people that we're going to pay you for, they can't do anything because you bought a $100 router to save money. And now we can't do anything with that information that doesn't exist. How do we know who got breached? How we know what information was leaked out?
Wow.
And the basic stuff like hard drive encryption and the two-factor authentication, I'm going to talk about for 5,000 times if I had the option to do it. The VPN tunnel, that's just a secured way to tunnel your traffic between your laptop at home or your home computer, whatever it is, over to where it's supposed to land eventually, the Office network, the cloud solution, Microsoft, Azure, Amazon, all of those cloud solutions offer the ability to have a VPN tunnel built in. Why not take advantage of it? You want to waste so much time later to save 5 seconds now to have an extra step to have your employees log in. It makes no sense to me.
Beits, can you dumb that down a little bit for us? As you said, you're using terms that are familiar to you as an expert, but may not be familiar to everybody, or even if they've heard the term, they don't know exactly what it means. So let me ask you a couple of real specific short questions. First,
Sure.
what is a VPN?
VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and it had an evolution of being able to connect, let's say, two buildings together for big corporations that have two different buildings in two different cities or whatever. They used to have a tunnel between the two of them. And today it evolved to a lot more user-friendly end user kind of solution that you can, I'll give you an example. There's a program called VPN Secured or VPNs. You can pay $40 or $50 lifetime subscription, or like $5 a month, or something ridiculously cheap. Gives you the ability to turn on, it's an application that sits on your cell phone, your tablet, your Mac, your PC, any device that you own. You turn it on when you feel like it by double clicking on it. It's as simple as that. And it now routes all your web traffic, all your internet traffic from that device that you're on over through that company, that VPN company servers, and then out to the internet. So people use VPN today a lot to mask their traffic. So their internet provider that you traffic your internet, that you tunnel your internet traffic through, your Cox, CenturyLink, whoever, they don't get to see what you're doing because some people don't want to share that information. The net neutrality is killing some type of people. So you can have an app on your computer that will hide the traffic and will route it to a third-party kind of provider. That is what people use today for VPN for, to mask their internet traffic. But on the business world, VPN is basically the same idea of downloading a little program that can run on any device that you connect from. And that traffic, that program will cause your computer to tunnel to the, let's say, your office router or your office server, depends where you try to connect to. And all the traffic that goes now between your device and the firewall on the router at the office will be encrypted. So nobody can sniff that traffic. Nobody can read. It's kind of like sending a locked box with UPS with an armed guard from your house to the office versus sending a postcard. You know, you're sending a postcard, you put it in the mailbox, anybody can open the mailbox and see. The mailman can see what's on the. I'm sorry?
Okay, so should folks, our listeners who are working remotely themselves or have employees that are working remotely, be using a VPN if they're handling any of the sensitive protected information that we've talked about?
Absolutely, 1000%. In today's technology abilities, there should be no reason why you would not force that on every person, employees, owners, anybody that needs to access company data or transfers any data that you don't want anybody else to see. Absolutely, hands down, no reason not to do that. And I think it's very irresponsible of a business owner to not have that solution. It's so cheap today to do that. You can actually have a software only. You don't even have to buy special routers today. LogMeIn, for example, logmein.com has a solution they bought a few years ago called Hamachi, Hamachi. Hamachi is a point-to-point VPN solution. You install it on your target computer, your source computer, and they connect with each other through that LogMeIn tunnel. It costs nothing. I mean, it has a small fee, but it's so making no sense not to do it.
Great.
So it sounds like there's no expense excuse, and there's no usability excuse, because it sounds like you said to activate some of these things, it's as simple as a double click on a desktop to put it into play. So it's not that it's technologically out of reach of anybody who's listening either.
Absolutely.
Right? It doesn't sound complicated than using iTunes or logging into your email or doing the other things that we do every day.
Exactly. If you know how to open the Facebook app on your computer or WhatsApp or whatever it is, you should be able to operate a VPN software with the same ease. Absolutely.
Wow. You know,
Excellent. Thank you.
it's
And I really,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I also really appreciate the point you brought up about insurance coverage. While I harp on all of my clients about having all of the right kinds of specialty insurance, and in fact, one of our other episodes, Joseph and I had a commercial insurance expert on to talk about some of these issues. But the idea that your coverage to adapt to your current reality and may not apply to home workers and remote workers with a commercial policy is something that made me sit up a little bit, and that's something that I'm going to remind people about to check on that issue. The other exposure that we commonly see on insurance is people say, yes, I have cyber and data insurance. And what they actually have is a $50,000 rider on a general liability policy or on their medical malpractice policy. And I can tell by the way that you're giggling that you understand clearly that $50,000 ain't going to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, think about just the digital forensics initial investigation for any breach can be about 5 times that. It's ridiculous. It's just putting a check mark just to say you have it. It's not going to protect you in any way.
Wow.
Excellent.
Wow.
Thank you. Joseph, I'm sorry, where were you going with what you heard?
Oh no, I'm sitting here listening and absorbing, and it's not if, it's when. It's not if you're going to get hacked at some point. And I hate to be a doom and gloomer, I'm not, but it's when. When's it going to happen? How big's the breach going to be? And my wife is in the mortgage business, and they handle tons of sensitive information. She works from home. I'm going to send this episode to her boss and just make sure that the owner of the company understands, do they have VPN, and do they have password protection that's significant for all of the remote people. They have 20 people all across the country all working from home. And guess what? When you do a mortgage, you pretty much have everybody's information about everything, including their tax returns and everything else. So she keeps everything under lock and key, and they do a minimal amount of security. But I know she takes stuff on her phone all the time. Is she using double authentication on her phone? It's interesting. So we talked a little bit about insurance policy requirements. Do you need to go into any more detail about that with numbers or anything like that before we move on to what would be the final question?
There's just one more thing that I want your viewers to think about. It's not just about what insurance policy you have as a business owner. It's also what vendors you use and what insurance company, what insurance coverage they have.
Oh, wow.
It is a huge problem where you hire anywhere from your IT company to a cleaning company. It's just like Ike said, it's not about who's going to fall in your office tomorrow. I'll tell you a 20-second story and you'll see where I'm going with that. A couple of years ago, there was a casino in Las Vegas, I believe it was Vegas, that was breached. There was a huge data breach over there. And do you know what the cost of downtime is for a casino, right? They lose a lot of money. And they were breached not because an employee clicked on a bad link or because somebody's laptop was stolen or company email was breached. They were breached because the HVAC company that they used, the air conditioning company that has remote access to get alerts from the HVAC system in the casino, the
Wow.
HVAC company was breached. And from everything I read, it wasn't a coincidence. A hacker wasn't able to penetrate the casino security, so he went to all the vendors that the casino uses. And sure enough, an HVAC company said, I don't worry about security. What do I have? I have air-conditioned receipts. What do I care about?
Yeah.
And yeah, you should care about. So that insurance wasn't in
Wow.
existence. And
That's
how do you know what's
interesting.
protected?
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Again, this is the space you live in every day. Normal people like me, we don't think about that. Vendors,
Yeah.
really, and their security, and are they secure? And so interesting. So as we kind of bring this to a close, I want to honor everybody's time. So why is antivirus not enough? People have antivirus that comes on your computer, and some people upgrade a little bit here or there, but why is that not enough?
Because a few reasons, and I'll shorten it by a lot, again, to respect everybody's time. Old school antivirus programs like Norton, Kaspersky, McAfee, they used to have a signature-based protection, meaning a virus is out in the wild, and people will figure out it. Let's take McAfee, for example. McAfee is going to have their researchers figure out, okay, there's a new virus. Let's figure out where it came from. Let's figure out how to secure it and block it from causing any damage. And now we have to push it to our million customers that have our program. So every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, your computer used to go out to McAfee and search for a new definition file, it's called, signature file, and it will download it, and now you're protected from that. Now, today, the biggest problem is the zero-day attacks, the attacks that the antivirus programs don't even know about yet, let alone developed the or the vaccine for it. And those things are attacking and are the most ruthless ones because they cause the most damage. And what happens is antivirus programs today are replaced with the anti-malware solutions that are artificial intelligence based. And this is where it's really becoming cool, in my opinion. I'm a geek at heart, so I get excited about that. It's basically software that learns what is it that you usually do on your computer, and then when there's something out of the norm, it's going to prevent it from happening. Yeah, it's still going to look for files that might be infected or known to be infected. But let's say usually you send out 5,000 emails a month or 50 emails a day. All of a sudden, your computer is sending 200 emails in a matter of an hour. Obviously, something is potentially wrong. And the artificial intelligence engines know how to look at that and actually prevent that from happening. They just shut down some type of traffic, etc. So antivirus by itself today is not enough. The next generation virus protection, malware protection is what every business should go to. We usually recommend a company called Cylance, which is spelled Cylance. And another one, Sentinel-1 is another one. Don't ask me how to spell it because I always get confused with that. Sentinel-1 and Cylance are the most popular ones. Cylance is actually created by and maintained by BlackBerry, and they're all about security, obviously. So it's a very legit company.
Interesting.
Viruses are not going to be what's attacking us as much as it used to. It's more about stealing our information and taking information off of our devices and uploading it to the dark web. The virus doesn't need much, or hacker doesn't need much to get it done. So it's not enough because of that.
Interesting. So yeah, and we hear about the dark web, and I know that it doesn't sound good. It sounds bad. It sounds menacing and sinister, and it is. Yeah, so we've covered a lot today, and again, in honor of everybody's time, we try and keep this to about 30-35 minutes. But there's so much to think about here, but it's pretty simple. And if you can give us the three things you recommend for your clients to do, or want our listeners to think about right now. Obviously, I think one of them is that whole password protection thing, right? And what else?
It's hard to pinpoint the only top three because you don't want to leave other open back windows. But I would say password protection, password manager, sorry, the two-factor authentication, that text message it's sent to you every time you try to log in. And the third thing will be encryption, the hard drive encryption or email encryption. Don't just send postcards out in the mail. You want to secure that traffic or secure that hard drive if it's stolen. I would say number 4 will be to just know your limitations. You're not an IT person as a business owner. I'm not going to go and run a law firm right now or a dental office. I'm not expecting you to run an IT company out of your office in your dental suite there. Hire somebody that understands what the risks are, that stays on top of it all the time, that can give you advice in 2 months when a million things change and you don't know anything about it because you went back to practice dentistry. Those are the things that people need to think about, I think, the most.
Yeah, and this is not the kid that built your website for you. No, this is a whole specialty. This is like, you got a heart problem, go to the heart surgeon. Don't go to an orthopedic guy. That's not what you do. Well, thank you so much. Ike, you have any final questions or comments for Beits?
I think we could talk to Beits for another hour easily, and we may have to invite him back on as things change. And I know that this threat, like many other risks that we've covered, evolves quickly. As we saw just recently with the exposure of what happened with solar winds and how many different business and government entities that affected. And I think that the warning that we're providing here to our listeners is, if the most secure companies and government agencies in the world can be hacked and have their information taken, so can you. And you are a high value target to people who are reselling that information on the dark web, which we didn't get into today, but Beits had alluded to. And maybe that's something that he can help us with, either in providing us some links and maybe sharing some detail on that in our LinkedIn group, or maybe the subject of our next conversation. But thank you so much for making time.
Absolutely.
This is an important issue, and we're glad to have your expertise to share.
Glad to be here. Thank you guys for your time and for doing this. This is something that I think the world is lacking, that quick half-hour, 1-hour advice that we can all consume as individuals, as business owners, as family people. We have responsibilities, and you guys are doing something very nice for your community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And we enjoy the opportunity to share balanced information with our listeners. We do that all the time. We want you to be informed. We want you to be prepared. We want you to be disciplined in your approach to things. We know that there's a lot of misinformation out there, left, right, center. We try and bring you balanced information that you can use to help yourself, your business, your employees, your family, to not just survive, but thrive in this very challenging environment that we continue to find ourselves working through. So for now, I'm going to say thank you for my co-host, Ike Devji, for our guest, Beits Livneh, and I'm Joseph Rosales. Thank you for joining us on Business in the New Normal, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.